Hi everyone, it is Toby from Toby's Urban Sketch. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Now what we're going to be doing is a landscape. So a few people have asked, can we use these urban sketching skills, these loose sketching skills, can we apply them to a landscape instead of something urban, something rural? And the short answer, if you want to skip the rest of this video, the answer is yes, of course we can. The principles are still the same. It's all about shape, light, and loosening up, and then just applying those colours, thinking about them in a way that we enjoy. And yes, absolutely, all of these things that we always talk about, all of these things apply just as much to landscapes as they do to urban scenes, and that is exactly what I'm going to show you today. In this process we'll be doing 5 steps, the same sort of 5 steps you'll see me do over and over again in my other videos, but we'll lay them out and we'll talk about the small differences which we change and fiddle with to take ourselves from an urban to a sort of landscape technique. But I'm sure you'll be just as happy with the result. As ever, if you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe. It's a huge help to my channel to keep it growing little by little. And if you do like this kind of thing and my kind of style, you can always check out my course, which is on sketchloose.co.uk, and all of my supplies and things are on my website, urbansketch.co.uk. But without further ado, let's get into this really fun sketching process, see what we make of it. And let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Just let me know, do you like this? Do you see challenges? Do you think there's something else that we should change? Or do you prefer it if I just stick to my urban scenes? Every opinion valid, really interesting to hear your thoughts. So let me know in the comments. Now, what are we doing? We're going to be doing a 5-step process, same as the normal process for watercolours, and we're going to be using the same stuff here. So I've actually got one pen. I'm going to be using my Tombow Fudensoki pen. You could use a fountain pen, which I often use. You could use a fine liner. It just needs to have waterproof ink and nothing clever, nothing special. I'm going to use a couple of brushes, a size 10 and a size 6 round. What was it, a size 6 or a size? Yes, it is a size 6 round. My normal set of watercolours and a cold press watercolour sketchbook. All of this stuff is linked on my website, and you can see a link for that below, where you can find just all my different supplies listed in different qualities and things. So if you want to read more about these, check that out. Otherwise, let's get on and start our lovely bit of sketching. So step 1 of our process, what is it? Well, step 1 is shapes, the same as we would with buildings. We're going to spread our image over 2 pages because it's a landscape. We want it to be broad. We're going to focus on one page, but with some sort of overlap, some flopping onto this side. So the shapes that we're looking for, this time are actually, some of them are very big. So our whole foreground, this grassy area, this is a shape, but it's a shape with texture. So it's got this grassy edge, but as we get to the edge of the grass, we just do a couple more little fronds here. Then we come round. What have we actually got? We've got a triangle, haven't we? We've just got a giant triangle of grass. And then we can keep moving around and finding similar ideas. So we've got this tree. This is basically a circle. We can just sketch it in with a loose edge. We could do loops. It doesn't really matter. But you just find your shorthand for trees. And for me, it's just loose and frilly kind of flowing strokes. And use it. And then if you use it the same way in all your sketches, or just the same way in one sketch, so you've got multiple trees all looking the same, it's a great way of sketching natural objects. Then in the background, what have we got? Well, it's kind of the midground, isn't it? We've got this slither, let's call it a very long rectangle, and that's our beach land. We can draw that in, no problem. We can keep our continuous line going if we want by going around our tree. We've got very small shapes. Above that, there's obviously a little town in the background, so we can find those very small shapes. And then we've got bigger shapes with small shapes on top, much like the grass. So this is just another triangle, which is the kind of the hill or the heathland behind this beach. But it's got little shapes on top. It's got these little trees, so we can find those. And then in the background, yet another little line, little shape. And we can come round, and again, it's got sort of little roughness to it, but it's kind of just a triangle. If we're We're not trying to be clever, we're not trying to be fancy about it, really. We've just got a triangle in the background. And we can find that the triangle's got a bottom edge just coming in here. And there you go, that's your shapes basically done. There's a couple of little bits and pieces, isn't there? So like in the lake here, we've got little slithers of darkness. And then in the foreground, we can start finding natural shapes again. So these bits of grass. And these shapes are kind of hard to define, but they're just basically simple polygonal shapes. So little things with different angles, and they're hard to define, but we don't need to define them exactly. We can find them as a texture as well as just finding them as a shape. We can see if we come under this grass in places, actually some of this grass has got a sort of double layer. So let's just find that as well. And before you know it, we've basically already got this scene, because landscapes are, in many ways, very easy because their shapes are so big. And that is it, that is step one done. Because of how big these shapes are, it's so easy just to sketch them, as long as we don't get too stuck in specific details. Then step two, paint the light, so the same as we normally do. And we can be just as loose, be having just as much fun. So let's start in the sky. And I'm just angling my sketchbook. And especially in landscapes, when everything is natural and flowing, angling this sketchbook and getting that flow of colours through the scene is, I think, even more important to the sort of integrity of capturing that feel of the scene. Now, in the landscape as well, perhaps you want to focus more on things like clouds. So what have I done? I've pre-wet the page, I've dropped my colours in, and I'm moving them around, but I'm leaving these white gaps. I'm bringing the same blue down into the lake, because the light that reflects off the lake, what is it? Well, it's the same colour as the sky, isn't it? So we know if we've done that, that our light on the lake's going to be about right. Now, going back to the sky, I want to continue with these lovely shapes. And I'm not going to sketch the clouds exactly as they are, but I'm leaving these white areas. Some of them are soft, some of them are hard. And if you look at your clouds, you'll notice some of them have really hard edges and some of them are fluffy and soft. So we want a mix of these hard and soft edges, and that's by applying it on a mix of wet paper and dry paper. Within the clouds, what have we got? We've got some tone, haven't we? So we could try a few things. I'm actually going to let's go a bit niche. Let's go for some Perylin Violet, maybe mixed with a little bit of sepia. So we've got a browny purple. And if we just drop that in, much as we have before, just under the clouds, we'll suddenly just get this feeling of shadow, this feeling emerging. And again, the shadows will move and blend, and they'll do their own thing. We could come in with a bit of water, and we can scrub out a bit more cloud if we want. We can scrub out some of that blue. We could do the same here. And we're just creating variation. We could do the opposite. We can take more blue and add in more punchy blue sky and really start contrasting. What we don't want to do is overdo it. Same as ever. We don't want to overdo things. So once we've got variation, once we've got that feel of clouds, we're just painting the light here, remember. So move on, move to the next step. Now, next up, we'll be reflecting some of those clouds down here. Just getting some of those same colours. Again, we're not worried too much about being specifically correct as much as we are about getting the right feel. And then, coming down yet another layer, we're going to this greenery. So, we've got faint green, kind of blue-green. So the further away colours get, the more blue they tend to feel. So we can allow the blue sky and this green to mix. It's brilliant, it's doing that job for us. In front of that we've got a more punchy green, haven't we? And I'm actually going to include our tree here because we can connect stuff up. It's fine to connect stuff up. And then right in the foreground we've got another green. So I should have said I've been using Cascade green for these greens. I'm going to change to a different green. Now if you're less lazy than me, you might want to mix greens, in which case this green's got more yellow in it. And less blue, whereas these greens have got more blue and less yellow, just to swap out their feel. Again, let's link things up. Let's get this lake flowing into our foreground. Why not? Nothing wrong with it at all. And then lastly, the last shape which is missing colour is our beach. So a bit of Hansa yellow just punching its way in. We can add that little bit into our grass in the foreground as well. There you go. We've painted the light, and already this landscape is coming together. And I hope you're seeing in these simple processes that actually, yeah, we can use the same techniques, the same skills. It's almost easier to do landscapes, almost easier, but with a different focus. The focus is more on these watercolours. So let this dry, and we'll come back for step 3. And here we are, nice and dry, ready for step 3. And step 3 is where we start picking out those bolder colours. So we're going to go back and we're going to look at how we can enliven it and bring out some of the bolder colours and some of the foreground as well. So I'm going to start actually with these greens. Now I'm going to go back to my Cascade green, and what I'm going to do is take a more intense amount or more intense pigment and bring that same green back into parts of this hill. We don't want to necessarily fill it entirely up, so we can leave some white, some light coming through. Behind, you see how this is light and then it gets deeper and deeper. So I'm just going to also just pop a little extra coat of that dark green into the back and make it darker and darker as it gets over here. And that way we've got this layering effect, but also a sense of depth and a sense of light coming through on this side. We could add just a couple of touches in as well if we want to just create even more variety. Now, if we see what happens with those greens is that they come forward into the lake. So if we take some blue to start with, and we just make a nice little wash, and you see we can make a sort of graded wash and get some of this light coming through as well. And then, having got our blue back into our lake, we can bring down some of these greens. Just drop them in, or we can drop a little bit of green in here and here. And that way we're just getting those authentic feeling reflections, that darkness, that shadow coming through. Do the same here, and this way it's starting to link everything together. We take a little bit more sepia, start reflecting some of those shadows, and then a bit of sepia in. Why not just use sepia instead of black for these dark areas, for these darkest dark areas? Just a couple of touches of that in and around, and this is where we're having fun really. We're exploring our image and not over focusing on details, but seeing how do we want to respond to what our colours are doing. Next, let's come forward again to this tree, a bit more of the same green, and I'm going to go sepia again with our green. That's a good way of making a dark green. So adding a brown to a green is a nice way of just making it deeper and more earthy. And again, we want a bit of this light. Look how it's so bright and shiny in the reference at the edge. Perhaps another way of bringing that out is just by dropping in a bit of yellow at the edges, but also leaving some of that light coming through from the back. And before you know it, we're all the way at the front. And so we can come back in again with more of this green. So this is the gold green instead of the Cascade green. And we can use that now. We didn't touch into these grassy areas before, but we can use that here to make this grass nice and green as well. And you see, we talked about this, how it gets dark at the edge, so why not bring in some of this Cascade green sepia mix to bring in that dark area. A few little splashes for a little bit of texture. Whilst we're doing splashes, texture into that, to the lake will be lovely as well, just creating more fluid, sort of reverse cauliflowers and things. And we can, if we want, if we're feeling brave, we can touch in a little bit more darkness into some of these cloud shadows. Now I say brave because what we're doing, we're introducing some hard lines here. Do you see how instead of being soft and fluid, suddenly these extra touches of colour are definitely like, they feel like a layer on top, and all around them it's got a hard edge. So what we want to do is reduce some of that. So taking a clean brush with a bit of water on, we come in and just soften. So clean it off again, start just away from that shape, come in and soften. And you see how now we've softened these edges back up. We left some hard edges at the top, that's fine. If we wanted to, we could soften those as well. So we come around some of these new shapes and soften everywhere. And we'd also add some of these little flecks just to suggest those shadows are a bit more varied. And there we are. So that is it. That's stage 3 done. Painting those bold colours. Again, just let this dry and we'll come back shortly for step 4. So back on our mostly dry page, we're ready for step 4. Step 4 brings us back to our pen. What we're going to do, we're just going to find a few extra details. You might want to sort of regather some of your lines as well. So, for example, where these colours have seeped over the edge, we just recreate a lovely little bit of line work. And here we can find some of these shapes which our loose colours have created, and we can use them for these extra touches of line work. And just seeing how by applying a little ink to these watercolour shapes, suddenly things come really to life. Same in this background, we can find some of these dark shapes that we've created and just bring them back. Maybe in this tree, to bring it closer, we want just a little bit more suggestion of that leaf-like detail. Or maybe we want to make the outline of it bolder and we want to just go around that outline again and really bring it forward. Remember, a bold line brings things close to us, brings things forward. There's little touches we could find now. We've got all these little boats, I think, in the lake, or there's certainly something sort of man-made in the lake. So we can just do these little suggestions there, darken some of the shadows, and just avoid overdoing it, but all these little, tiny little touches. And I think the thing is, for a landscape, there isn't too much of this to do. So we could keep going, but equally we could stop. And actually, I'm going to stop there. A really quick step of our sketch. Just finding those few extra shapes. And having found those few extra shapes, we can move on to our boldest, brightest colours and those finishing touches. That's, of course, step 5, the final step. So we've suggested some buildings back here. Now, in the image, what are they? They're basically reflections. They're bright. But we can suggest little roofs. Why not just add little touches of red? And we can use that same red to just show that, you know, here's our man-made stuff. Our man-made stuff has got these lovely red colours. There's no harm in doing that. No harm in creating our own shorthand, even if the shorthand is colours. We can take maybe some bold yellow next and really get some of the variation into this beach. Because the beach is a key feature, isn't it? So this bold yellow can really just come forward. Equally, we can come into our foreground if we think about trying to get these bold touches. Let's mix our two greens. I've got my Cascade green, my gold green, and now we can just do a little bit of suggestion of grass. We've done it with the ink, done it with loose washes. Now we can do it with little watercolour shapes as well. Same with little splashes in this foreground will really help it come to life. And last but not least, we can come in, just suggest some waves in our well, it's a lake, but in our water. We could do this with our pen, but you know, if we're doing a landscape, sometimes it's nice to have just that little extra touch of loose watercolour just flowing around the page. And of course, no harm for me, no harm in a few splashes. And there you go. That is our scene done. Really quick, really simple, using, exactly the same technique. So to go back to the question I get asked all the time, can we use our same techniques to do landscapes, to sketch things which are predominantly not about buildings, not about urban scenes? And the answer is yes, without a shadow of a doubt, we can, and we can have a lot of fun doing it, use our same skills with a slightly different emphasis, a little more colour. And there you go. So let me know, what do you think? Share with me any examples you create. You can do that by tagging me on Instagram or adding the hashtag SketchLoose. And you know, if you enjoy my stuff, please do leave a comment and subscribe. You can also, as I said before at the beginning, you can find my full-length big courses on sketchloose.co.uk. So check that out if you're interested in my style. But most importantly, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy continuing to be creative, having fun, breaking some barriers at home, and just sketching to enjoy. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.